Under the searing lights of the operating theater, as surgeons wielded scalpels and suction tubes with grim determination, Bill Spencer watched with white-knuckled hands clenched at his sides while his son Liam lay vulnerable beneath the drape, unconscious and hooked to tubes that hissed and gurgled with each breath. The attending neurosurgeon, Dr. Simmons, removed the final fragment of the bullet that had lodged in Liam's shoulder and chest, the wound already stitched and blood pressure perilously low, and prepared to close the incision. It was then, as the anesthesiologist monitored fluctuations in Liam's intracranial pressure, that a chill passed down Bill's spine. Anomalous readings, a shadow on the CT scan taken to confirm no residual shrapnel. A gray mass barely a centimeter wide but sinister in its placement. "Sir, Dr. Simmons whispered to Bill, who stood behind the sterile glass viewing window, "We've found something unusual. We'll need to perform an exploratory procedure immediately. It looks like a tumor." Bill's world constricted to a pinprick of terror. A brain tumor, undetected until now, threatening the son he idolized, the heir to Spencer Publications, the young man whose laughter had once echoed through the halls of the mansion and warmed his aging heart. Panic stalked Bill's mind. How many times had he ignored warnings, shoved aside caution in pursuit of the next deal, the next scandal, the next headline? How many lives had he imperiled with his ruthless drive? But now his legacy, the Spencer name, and above all his son's life teetered on the edge of a razor. Meanwhile, in the hushed corridors just beyond the oar, whispers of guilt and regret pressed in on Bill like a suffocating cloak. He recalled the fateful morning when he had leaned on political favors and pulled every string to secure a pardon for Luna Baldwin, the impulsive act of mercy that had unleashed a cascade of tragedy, Sheila's escape, the alleyway confrontation, Steffi's bullet wound, Luna's arrest, Liam's reckless intervention, and now, this hidden tumor revealed only because the bullet had torn open Liam's flesh. Bill's teeth ground together in silent fury at himself. If he had not championed Luna's cause, if he had not silenced every voice of caution, if he had not pressed the governor's hand, if he had not unleashed Luna into a maelstrom of vengeance, none of this would have happened. None of this. He had traded safety for reputation, compassion for expediency, and now Liam paid the price. Desperation spurred him into action. As Liam was transferred to ICU, ventilated and sedated, Bill slipped out of the hospital gown he had been forced to don and raced back to Spencer Publications under cover of night. In the boardroom, the mahogany table stretched before him like a battlefield, empty chairs awaiting allies. He unlocked a secure briefcase and withdrew share certificates, pages of digits and legalese that spelled the future of the company. By dawn, those shares would be in the hands of faceless shell corporations, liquidated to generate a war chest large enough to secure the services of the world's most renowned neurosurgeon, Dr. Alessandra Moretti in Zurich, a legend whose unparalleled success rate in excising malignant brain tumors bordered on myth. Bill typed furiously at his encrypted laptop, contacting offshore accounts, approving wire transfers, forging the final signatures under the assumption that every second counted and that, in a failing father's heart, no sacrifice was too great to save his son. And yet, as the first rays of sunlight slanted through the tall windows of Spencer Publications, Katie Logan, Bill's estranged wife and Liam's mother, arrived unannounced, her eyes swollen from tears but blazing with fury. She found Bill hunched behind the console in his private office, phone to his ear, uttering instructions in a whisper meant for bankers half a world away. "Bill," she hissed, slamming the door so hard the glass rattled. "What in God's name are you doing?" He froze, realizing his clandestine operation had been exposed. He replaced the phone and turned, guilt and defiance warring on his face. "I'm arranging for Liam to get the best care in the world," he replied, voice low. "He has a brain tumor, Katie, a brain tumor we only discovered because of that damn bullet. If I don't act now, he'll die." Katie's shoulders shook with equal parts sorrow and indignation. You think I don't care about Liam? You think I'd let him suffer under your watch? But secretly selling Spencer's shares without telling me, or the board, without any transparent process, you're jeopardizing everything his family has built. He closed the distance between them, placing a hand on her arm. This isn't about business, Katie. This is about our son's life. She yanked away, eyes glittering with tears of rage. You're selling his birthright. You're crippling the company, Bill. Do you realize what you're doing? You're risking the jobs of thousands, our family's future, but her words faltered as Bill's next revelation slammed into her like a freight train. Not thousands. I've limited the sale to a small block of non-voting shares, Katie. It won't affect control. And I've set every dollar aside in an anonymous trust. I've even arranged for Dr. Moretti's flights, her hospital suite in Zurich, the entire surgical team. Liam's medical bills could bankrupt us if this goes badly, and I can't expose him to that risk. She pressed a hand to her forehead, the magnitude crashing down on her. Liam, her boy, had a tumor Bill had known for hours and launched a covert financial raid to save him. And she, as Liam's mother and Bill's partner in the empire, had been shut out. You think money can fix everything? She whispered, voice breaking. You think the best neurosurgeon will guarantee he comes home? There's no cure untested, no promise unbroken. Yet you gamble with the company, our family's legacy, our children's futures. Bill's face cracked, regret seeping through his bravado. I'm sorry, Katie. I did what I thought was right. I couldn't stand the thought that Liam might slip away while we bickered over procedure. I panicked. Katie's expression softened for an instant, sorrow overtaking anger. She stepped forward and placed a trembling hand on his chest. He's our son. We're supposed to do this together. You don't get to decide alone. Bill closed his eyes, nodding. You're right. He reached into his pocket and produced a second phone, handing it to Katie with a shaky breath. I need you to call the board. Explain everything. Tell them the shares sale was to fund urgently needed surgery. Tell them I'll restore control as soon as Liam is out of harm's way. Help me fix this. Katie studied the device, then pressed it into his palm. Fixing this starts with full transparency. No more secrets. No more unilateral decisions. Bill swallowed hard and nodded, steeling himself for the storm to come. As the two of them left the boardroom to face a meeting called at dawn, the reality of their shared anguish and responsibility bound them together in a fragile alliance. Across the ocean, Dr. Alessandra Moretti received Bill's discreet request, a life-or-death extraction in the hallowed halls of her Zurich clinic, where her skill and reputation would now be tested on Liam Spencer, the scion of an American media dynasty. Back in Los Angeles, the embattled Katie prepared her defense to the board, crafting an explanation that balanced the urgency of paternal love with the imperatives of corporate governance. As Spencer Publications directors gathered under glittering chandeliers, the tension hung thick. Bill, standing before the board, confessed the sale, laid bare his motives, and begged their forgiveness. Katie, beside him, spoke with unwavering resolve, pledging her support if they would only allow her to steer this crisis with openness. The board members exchanged wary glances as the fate of the company and the fate of a dying young man hung in the balance. And somewhere between the black-tie formality of the boardroom and the antiseptic stillness of the ICU, Liam lay unaware that his father's greatest deal ever was being brokered not on Wall Street, but on the knife's edge between hope and despair. The path ahead was uncertain. Would the trust built in a moment of desperation bind a fractured family together, or would the shadows of secrecy and sacrifice prove too toxic a legacy? Only time and the steady hand of the world's finest neurosurgeon would tell. Nick Carlton's decision to infuse $10 million of his own capital into the revitalization of the venerable Brooks Bedroom line was hailed by investors as a bold masterstroke. But what none of them anticipated was the emotional tempest that would erupt in the boardrooms and showroom floors of Los Angeles's most glamorous design houses. From the moment Brooke Logan, the namesake and creative soul behind the sumptuous bedding, silk linens, and bespoke canopy designs, agreed to partner with Nick's newly formed restructuring fund, dubbed Carlton Capital Relaunch. Every strategic meeting took on the charged intimacy of a clandestine tryst. In the glass-walled conference room at Carlton Capital's downtown headquarters, Kate Carlton deftly laid out the rebranding strategy while Brooke leaned forward, her elegant fingers caressing the soft fabric swatches as Nick watched her with an intensity that transcended mere professional interest. When Brooke caught his eyes lingering on the pastel jacquards, she smiled in recognition of the unspoken bond forming between them. The thrill of saving a beloved legacy line from obsolescence and the spark of something far more personal. As Nick and Brooke collaborated on product placement schedules, development roadmaps, and influencer partnerships, the boundaries between business and pleasure blurred, and their whispered counsel over high thread count samples hinted at sentiments neither dared articulate. Meanwhile, halfway across town at Forrester Creations, Ridge Forrester was watching every move with mounting alarm. Word had come to him that Brooke Logan, his Brooke, had signed what the press had gleefully dubbed her new life contract with Nick Carlton, granting the fund not only managerial control of Brooke's bedroom, but also a seat on the Forrester board of directors. The contract's signature line, adorned with Brooke's graceful script and Nick's equally confident flourish, lit a fire in Ridge's heart hotter than any furnace in his textile mill. Panic gnawed at him. If Brooke's line truly shifted under Nick's wing, if her creative identity became intertwined with his burgeoning design empire, Ridge risked losing her both as a business partner and as the love of his life. Under cover of night, he initiated a clandestine operation to undermine the very production line he had once celebrated. He dispatched a trusted lieutenant in production to the remote Glendale mill where Brooke's bedroom pieces were sewn and finished, instructing him to tamper with the needle alignment on the industrial embroidery machines and to introduce subpar dyes into the linen dye vats, substances that would cause threads to unravel after the first wash and colors to bleed across pristine white pillowcases. At dawn, when the first bolt of custom-embroidered sheets emerged from the presses and the initial quality control inspections began, consumers within the test market encountered disastrous flaws, delicate monograms frayed at the corners. Rich hues bled into stark backgrounds, and seams split under minimal tension. Social media lit up with complaints. Lifestyle bloggers decried inferior craftsmanship. Nick, who had flown in to oversee the relaunch personally, watched in horror as his meticulously planned rollout collapsed. Brooke, who had joined him at the mill to celebrate the first run of reimagined Logan Luxe designs, stared at the mess of ruined textiles and felt her heart constrict with equal parts betrayal and fear for Nick, for her brand, for her personal entanglement with him. In the electric silence that followed the discovery, Nick's voice trembled as he vowed to get to the bottom of the sabotage, and Brooke placed a comforting hand on his arm, unaware that the hiss of gossip through Forrester Creations corridors had already named Ridge as the architect of the crisis. Ridge, true to his forebearers, denied any involvement, but he allowed a network of loyalists in the Forrester manufacturing division to play dumb while the scandal erupted. He feigned concern, dispatching his own quality control teams to assist Carlton Capital's recovery effort, using every opportunity to erode Brooke's confidence in Nick's ability to safeguard her namesake line. The corporate battlefield was now bifurcated. On one flank stood Nick and Brooke, united in mission and in growing affection. On the other, Ridge and his eldest son Thomas, maneuvering in the shadows to reclaim control of Brooke's destiny from the upstart investor. Legal notices flew across conference tables as Carlton's lawyers accused Forrester Creations of industrial espionage, while Forrester's counsels countered with claims that Brooke had breached fiduciary duties by pledging the line without proper board approval. At the same time, Ridge confronted Brooke after a late-night strategy session at her Beverly Hills loft, himself posing as her staunch defender while subtly shredding her trust in Nick. "Brooke, you know I'd never betray you," Ridge whispered, voice low and urgent, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek with trembling fingers. "I'd stop at nothing to protect you and this company." Brooke drew back, eyes wide with hurt and confusion, seeing in Ridge's earnest expression the reflection of their once unshakable bond, even as her heart still pulsed at Nick's name every time she considered the partnership that had promised new life for her line. The tension between corporate strategy and romantic reckoning reached its apex at a joint press event on the rooftop of the Carlton Capitol Tower, where both factions had been invited to hear Brooke reveal her vision for the line's next season. Reporters and industry insiders gathered beneath the glow of chandeliers hung from steel beams as Brooke stepped to the podium, Nicholas Carlton at her elbow, Ridge Forrester at her far side, his posture rigid yet hopeful. Brooke began to speak of rebirth, of weaving personal narratives into every thread, but as she gestured toward the first stack of samples behind her, the fabric began to fall away in tatters, the very image of her line's fragility. Gasps erupted, cameras flashed. Ridge smirked, just for a heartbeat, while Nick ran to Brooke's side, wrapping an arm around her and promising the crowd they would right the wrongs within 48 hours. Brooke's voice cracked as she apologized for the fiasco and pledged transparency, but what the world saw was a love triangle writ large across a tableau of corporate ruin. Backstage, Ridge cornered Nick in the VIP lounge, his face a mask of controlled fury. "You think you can waltz in and steal my wife's heart and her legacy?" he hissed. Nick squared his shoulders. "I'm here because Brooke asked me here. I love her brand. I love her. If you had trusted her judgment, none of this sabotage would have been necessary." Ridge's hand lashed out, slapping Nick across the jaw, the sharp crack silencing the room. Brooke rushed between them, tears streaming as she clung to both men. "Stop it," she screamed, voice echoing through the lounge. "I'm the one who has to live with this line, with both of you. Why can't you see that?" The slap hung in the air like a challenge, and in that instant, Brooke realized that her product line's survival and her own happiness were entwined in a war that had no easy ceasefire. Over the next days, forensic teams unraveled Ridge's sabotage, the misaligned needles, the toxic dyes, the clandestine maintenance logs. Carlton Capital released the findings to the press, painting Ridge as the corporate backstabber. Forrester Creations retaliated with a lawsuit accusing Nick of defamation and breach of contract. Brooke, caught in the crossfire, torn between the promises she had given each man, Nick's pledge to nurture her line and her heart, Ridge's vow to protect her world, felt the pressure buckle her resolve. In the midst of boardroom battles and courtroom threats, Brooke summoned a final, desperate gathering at her childhood ranch, the one place where her past and her passion had first taken root. Beneath the sprawling oaks, with quilts from Brooke's bedroom draped over the fence rails, she confronted Ridge and Nick, laying bare the anguish she felt at having to choose between them. She spoke of legacy and love, of the line that had defined her and the men who claimed to define her future. As dusk settled, her voice trembled with the weight of every strategic decision she had made and every impulse of her heart. And in the gathering twilight, when neither corporate contract nor family lineage seemed sufficient to bind them, Brooke Logan realized that the only way to save her line and herself was to forge a new path entirely, one that would demand the sacrifice of alliances, the redefinition of loyalty, and the courage to follow both her vision and her truth, no matter where it led. In that moment, As the cicadas sang and the last light shimmered on the azure quilts, Brooke felt both the burden and the promise of rebirth, knowing that the war she had inherited would only be won the day she dared to rewrite the rules herself.